starting from the most recent presidents going back, the story with Obama and his first book, Dreams from
From
My
my father.
Father.
You
Yeah,
got
from
it.
my father.
Mhm.
Um, didn't sell that well. Wasn't a bestseller until I think he ran for president. Is that correct?
It was after, remember his big convention speech in
2004.
2004,
Yeah.
which, I mean, you could argue that at that point he was basically running for president.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, that speech, they were already working to bring it back in print. And once that speech blew up, they rushed it back into print,
Of
and
course.
it's been pretty much a bestseller ever since.
But the interesting thing about it, and you realize same thing, and we're going to touch on JFK. Uh, some things you can take away from how JFK treated profiles of courage and all of that. Um, with Obama, the fact that he would campaign, right, and he would give away copies of his book to people. It's just so that's an interesting thing. Like I don't know if, for example, if I don't know, a local politician, an unknown
Mhm.
person would start running in my local district and come up to me and it's like, this is why I should be mayor of New York City or whatever, and hand me their book.
Mhm.
That's so unusual, but in some ways that's very, very personal
Right.
because it's not a pamphlet. It's not something cheap. It's something like they're giving you a book
Right.
that they poured over. And with Obama, you could see that in spite of the fact that it didn't sell well, he valued it a lot because he probably, poured his heart out in that book.
Right.
Yeah.
I totally agree, and I still remember learning that detail. I was interviewing one of his old campaign aides. This was when he was a state senator,
Mhm.
and the book had kind of come out, gotten really nice reviews, but hadn't sold very well. And so they were going to destroy all the old paperbacks because it just wasn't selling. And Obama managed to buy them from an independent bookstore, a Powell's in Chicago, which is a wonderful independent bookstore there. And so Obama bought them really cheap. I think like 50 cents a copy, something like that. And they were just stacked in his office. But even when he would go on events, he would take a couple copies, and I think this really speaks to what you're saying. He didn't give them to everybody; he only gave them to the people he really connected with. But I think that's because the book for him was a very intimate story and a very personal story, and he wanted people to understand him. He's always been a politician motivated by a desire and a belief that mutual understanding can really change things. And so his with Obama, it's almost a cliche, right? We think of Obama, we think of his books, and of course he's a literary president. But what amazed me in working on that chapter is that even though that might be the first thing we think of, we still underrate how important the books were, because the first book, not only did it not sell well, it was terribly difficult for him to write. He was years late. He lost a book contract. Only through the clever workings of a very good agent that he had at the time was he able to get a second book contract. And interestingly, the same agent the same publisher who ended up signing into the second deal also had signed Donald Trump to Art of the Deal, a book that was very important in a different way to launching his political career. So same editor signed and launched both Obama and Trump, which is one of those ironies that in history that you just can't make up. But Obama's books mattered to him, and it sort of helped him figure out and make sense of his personal story, and sort of help him make peace with himself about his family and how different the different branches of his family were, and how they could interrelate, and how their differences made him stronger and made him understand things that other people might not. And so figuring out how to tell his story in his book also sort of made him figure out how to tell a political story. And so I mentioned that speech that we all know in 2004, the convention speech, there's no red states, there's no blue states. You can find lines in that are directly echoed in his book and in his life story. And so working on that book, he didn't just figure out what his life story meant. He figured out how his life story could appeal to future voters, to future readers. And so working through that book was really, I think, the essential step towards him becoming a successful politician. And, the book didn't sell at the time, but once he really became a successful politician, the book was there and became a crucial part in him kind of sustaining his success.
Yeah. One